Mhm.
Everybody has one place where they can go to understand what everybody's working on, where they're at. Are they on
Mm.
track? Are they off track? Where can we jump in and help each other and have one common language across the whole organization? So that when we're talking about goals and targets, everybody fully understands
Mm.
exactly what everybody's rocks are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Fred Stacey, who is the CEO of Cloud Tech Gurus. Fred, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
100%. And tell everyone a little bit more about Cloud Tech Gurus, what you guys are all about, who you help, and any context you want to share about the business.
Yeah, so we're technically called a technology services distributor, TSD. So think of us as a broker in between all the contact center buyers, customer experience buyers of technology services,
Hmm.
along with the consultants that help those organizations and the actual suppliers that provide the solutions to solve for various outcomes.
And when you find that a lot of these conversations start, or a lot of the people that you work with, is the main desire for them just being able to have that center for people to call through and have those, I guess, have a way to offload a lot of those tasks to those people? Is that kind of the main thing, or tell me a little bit more about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so contact centers, unless you're in this industry, a lot of people just think it's some random person picking up a phone somewhere in the world, and answering your call, right? The reality is there's a lot of technology under the hood.
Mm.
There's a lot of the data moving in today's world, a lot of artificial intelligence technologies that come into play into helping create the best experience for a
Hmm.
customer. And that's always the outcome or the intent,
Yeah.
not necessarily always the outcome.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, everybody remembers bad experiences versus, remembering the good ones, right?
Yeah.
If we go to a company's website and we get our problem solved without having to talk to anybody, we're happy. But
Hmm.
we don't remember it.
Mm.
But if you call somebody and you're sitting on hold for 2 hours, and then you finally get somebody and you get transferred a million times, then you get upset, then you post
Hmm.
on social media and then of course, that's when, everybody's hair is on fire and trying to
Yeah.
solve the problem, right?
Hmm.
So it's all yeah, the centers, it's inbound customer service support, outbound, sales, business development,
Mm.
debt collections, all critical pieces to
No.
maintain inside a business. So contact centers, are a lot
No.
broader than what people first think when they hear those words.
Yeah, 100%. And for my first impression, the first thing that always comes to mind is customer service. Hey, boom, that's it. That's it. That's the only thing that people are in need to fulfill. But it sounds like that's not the case.
No, no. And, it's funny you say that. Now that's what we all think of.
Hmm.
But, when I started in this industry, 30 plus years ago, it was everybody, whenever I told them I worked in call centers, they were like, oh, you're the people that call me at dinner and bother me. You know, that was what people thought of, right?
Hmm.
But, legislation and all kinds of changes to,
Hmm.
to regulations, privacy, security, those things are less top of mind when you think,
Hmm.
you're not thinking, telemarketing because a lot of that stuff has changed to more customized outbound
Sure.
messaging. And, it's just the world has shifted.
Yeah, 100%. And have you found that there's like a split of how that actually happens in the background as well? So a lot of people are just looking for, I don't know, 70% of the people looking for this type of service is in the customer service lens, and then
Yeah.
20% is the sales outbound, 10% is whatever else. What have you found that's spread to be?
Yeah. I don't know.
Huh.
That's an interesting question.
Mhm.
It is definitely reduced significantly because,
Yeah.
telemarketing rules, the TCPA regulations, and
Mhm.
how that's all evolved. I mean, I'd probably say customer base maybe 20% outbound.
Mm.
Uh, the rest of it is customer experience and inbound
That makes sense.
related technologies and services, and that's
Mhm.
really also partially because of where we market to and what we develop on and the
Mm.
tools and services we represent. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a pretty close 20,
Yeah,
80,
80/20
20.
rule, 80/20 rule works there for sure. And is there a specific type of industry that really gets the highest benefits or the highest outcomes from something like you what you guys provide, or is it all
No,
over the map?
anybody that needs to talk to their customers has value in what we do.
Mhm,
I think more importantly, though, some verticals that we've seen a significant increase in trying to get to the next iteration of what is the modern contact center is like healthcare,
mm,
financial services, banks, credit unions. They're all trying to get modernized. And healthcare is so far behind.
mhm,
That they're of course going through this rush right now, trying to get caught up.
mhm,
What I tend to see is a lot of the e-tail, retail, the software companies that are born in the cloud. Modern companies, they're no, much further down the
for
path.
sure.
But there's a lot of organizations. I mean, you think manufacturers, you think banks, you think, hospitals and
Mhm,
healthcare organizations. They have a lot of room to make up. So the growth is verticalized, but it
mhm,
depends on, right now it just seems like those are the two hottest
mhm.
segments in the entire market.
For sure, yeah, and when you say those things, it just I can see so many conversations that I've had in my head with some of these types of organizations that are just held back in time. So
Yeah, you go to the doctor's office, you check in manually, you write it down, you show them your card, somebody takes a scan of it, pencils down. Yeah, I mean, we all see it. We know, healthcare banks, they're, especially smaller banks, they're just behind the time.
mhm. Do you think
And
sorry, go ahead,
go
finish your
ahead.
thought, please.
No, no, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, do you think it's because of a lack of awareness that they are able to have a better solution, or is it just there's no interest for them um, to pursue that avenue?
Yeah, it's a good question. A little bit of fear, uncertainty, and
Mm,
doubt. This industry being in it as long as I have, I've got to see it mature from green screen applications to server-based Windows
mhm,
applications to hosted solutions, and now
mm,
we're all the way down the cloud path. I think they're saying we're in like cloud 2.0 or
mm.
3.0, whatever they're calling it now.
Sure, yeah.
But through the time the what people probably outside of the world don't realize is that moving and migrating all of this data infrastructure, to the cloud and then, getting the security right, getting all the human agents, trained up,
Mhm,
all the change management, it's
mhm,
complex. It just is.
mm,
It used to be we had literal punch down blocks with twisted pair going to agent stations
mhm.
that were hardwired into like a headset, that
Yeah.
had a little box on it. And to today where everything's software driven, cloud based, browser driven. It's just there's a lot of moving parts,
Mhm,
a lot you can like in a CRM with data movement, you could have, millisecond delays and not really be impacted as a user. But when it comes to a phone call, slight delays can cause serious problems with
mm,
quality. And, there's nothing worse trying to have a phone call with somebody and, they break up every second, every word,
mhm.
it just creates the absolute worst experience. So there's a lot more that goes into this than what people realize, as
Yeah.
often there is,
Yeah,
right?
100%, and you mentioned something in there, which is, the training of human agents, which is actually something that, I briefly, brought up to you when we had our first conversation, in how everything is changing now, because I can totally see that being, I guess, the biggest concern for a lot of these organizations. And hey, there's a lot of training behind the scene. We have to make sure this person's going to be good and everything else. But now AI is a thing. Now AI call centers are also a thing. AI bots that are speaking with these people. And I said to you last time, if I remember correctly, that I personally, from everything that I've seen, I think it's almost there. I don't think it's there yet. I think it's just missing a couple final things, maybe 3, 6 months down the line from today, whatever it was today, March 21st from today, 6 months, maybe we're there. But right now, I think there's something missing. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this entire
Yeah.
thing, the AI call centers, AI bots, and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is your experience today is based upon the deployment of the companies that you've spoke with, the bots. The technology, on the other hand, is there. There's the delays in time between, you asking a question and it responding,
Yeah.
in the older technology were so significant that it was almost painful,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
that's the first thing that
Um,
comes to mind for me.
yeah, 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 but that delay is significantly shrunk almost to where a human ear won't even pick up the difference.
Mm.
And you're talking about, I think it's, point 0.4 milliseconds. I There's a certain amount of time where the human ear doesn't know the difference,
Mm.
in a delay, and the technology's there, and it'll continue to get better. The with As you know, November of 22 kind of changed
Mhm.
everybody's world,
Yeah.
which is where ChatGPT was launched. Large language models started to come into play, which have moved to modern conversational and generative. And these technologies are moving so fast that some of our suppliers in the portfolio today are deploying and getting up to 90%. What we call deflection or
Hmm.
capture. There's a couple different terms in the industry, where they can actually handle the majority of the conversations.
Hmm.
Now, whether that's right to or not, that's a different conversation.
Mhm.
To actually really understand whether consumers want to interact with an AI tool, um, that's something that I think we'll all get used to,
Mhm.
and eventually it will be the primary way we communicate with companies, whether it's a conversational bot on a website,
Sure.
over text, over an app, or actually having phone calls.
Mhm.
The technology is there for all of them. It's
Mhm.
just, did you deploy it properly? Is it trained appropriately? And is
Mhm.
your company, is it actually using the right data, in those training models? That's actual, it's one of the challenges, is identifying what is good data to train it on.
Mhm.
And that's not something that's easy to figure out, right? That takes a little bit of supervised learning,
Yeah.
and some tuning. So what you see today, and a lot of times if you're experiencing, the longer delays, the very robotic voice, you're talking to an older technology.
Mhm.
That's just the reality of it. I first got involved with, machine learning almost 14 years ago in our space, trying to bring a supervised learning based chatbot to market. And we were so early that, I had a million conversations and nobody bought it, because nobody could believe that this
Mhm.
technology was possible. But I
Yeah.
knew at that moment in time, it was just a matter of time.
Mhm.
And with large language models and generative and where it's headed over the last couple of years, we're now there.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of how do you deploy it appropriately, and how do you, handle the change management in
Mhm.
your organization, and data security and governance. And, those are all things that we provide resources for,
Mhm.
as an organization, to contact centers.
Mhm. That's awesome, and I was actually just about to ask you, like, how you guys are actually implementing that into what you're doing as well. So, is that only on the resource side of things, or is it actually on the implementation and execution side of it as well, where you guys are implementing it?
Yeah, we're because we sit in between everybody. What we have is we help, companies identify the right solutions for what they're trying to solve for, right? So inside any contact center, we can bring, countless solutions to solve a particular problem,
Mhm.
or to get the customer to the outcome. But part of the problem with AI, artificial intelligence in general, is most companies are not ready to adopt,
Mm.
and they haven't gone through the AI readiness cycle to really understand what do they need to do, what do they have in place today,
Mm.
what works, what doesn't work, and then really put together a proper plan. Most companies are just out there throwing stuff up against the wall. They're literally buying point solutions when they don't even have their data normalized or structured appropriately, and that's partially on the suppliers, partially on the buyers.
Mm.
There's unrealistic expectations a lot of the time, especially prior to the more modern tool
Mhm.
sets. So we go in, we bring teams of operational experts and IT experts, data governance, data scientists. We bring them all in, and help companies really understand. Either we can do a maturity assessment, right? We can help
Mm.
with the point solutions. I mean, that's what we do every day.
Mhm.
But the consulting side is more a maturity assessment, understand where you're at,
Mm.
red, yellow, green, how's your organization sit on all of these different operational change
Mhm.
management and IT criteria? Yeah, and then sometimes companies need a full-on deep dive, and they can't afford to go out from the contact center practice. You can't pay 500,000, 750,000 to a top 5 consulting firm to come in and do your AI roadmap, right?
Mm,
So we brought together contact center experts, to really do a full roadmap ROI analysis,
hmm,
and give somebody exactly what they need to do to get
mhm.
themselves to the next iteration. I call it,
Awesome.
an AI enabled company because in reality, all of us will be. 5 years from now, if
Yeah.
your organization doesn't have artificial intelligence deployed in every department, you're behind the game.
Yeah.
And
Probably won't be
probably
there.
yeah,
Prob
exactly.
Yeah.
So, it still takes brute force, and there's no magic pill. There's no way, even with the models, with the ingestion models and the learning and the training getting
Mhm,
better, you still that doesn't you're not gonna magically create your change management in your organization. You're not gonna
mhm,
magically create, data governance policies, and
mhm.
IT infrastructure is not magically gonna be updated to the
Yeah.
latest. So that still requires human activity, and I think it's a big gap in the space.
Mhm, and do you have you found that there's a lot of these things that you're looking for, you mentioned, like, red, yellow, green,
Yeah.
when you're looking at a lot of these organizations, do you think that is from an operational sense of what they already have implemented with AI and the data and the technology within their company? Or would you say that that's actually on a more, I guess, personal level to the executives and what they think and how they're thinking and what they know about AI?
Right. So in the red, yellow, green, the maturity assessment, it's more about operational. So the way
Ah,
we
okay.
always approach everything is people, processes, and
Yeah.
technology, right? So it has to take that approach. So you're analyzing, what resources do you
Mm,
currently have? Do you have developers in house? Do you have project managers?
yeah.
Do you have, data scientists?
Mhm,
Then do you have the proper change management, processes in place?
mhm,
What currently is your infrastructure? Where's it at? All the nuances that go
mhm,
into where are you really at today according to all three pillars,
mhm.
right? You have to
Makes sense.
look at any change management as people, processes, and technology, and in that order, right? In
Mhm,
our opinion, especially in something that's so human resource heavy as contact centers, the people are an absolutely critical piece because no matter what, they're not going away.
mhm.
What we expect is that as artificial intelligence can take over more conversations, the stuff that gets to the agents is going to require a much more sophisticated
Yeah.
agent. You're going to have high empathy. The human skills are going to be so much more critical,
Yep.
problem solving. They'll all be enabled by artificial intelligence, things like agent guidance and really smart tools that can actually listen to the conversation and help guide the agent, to the right answer, right? Those are all tools that are going to be there, but the stuff that doesn't get handled by AI will be really complex,
Mm.
or really high emotional type of things. Like
Mhm.
if I'm calling my credit card company, I want to talk to a human.
Yeah.
If I've got a bunch of charges on there, I want to make sure that somebody's on top of it, and somebody's getting it taken care of. Now,
Mhm.
maybe someday in the future, AI will just see that, recognize it as fraud, remove it from my card, and I'll never have to worry about it ever again.
Uh-huh.
But today,
Some stuff
you
along that
know,
way.
still gonna have to call somebody.
Yeah, for
So,
sure, that makes sense. Thank you for the clarification there, Fred. And when you're looking at the company, I'm assuming there are many growth goals. Obviously, it sounds like there's so much opportunity, in everything that's happening with the world where we are now that I feel like a very old person saying that, but there's so much opportunity with technology and everything how it is. So when you're looking at those growth goals, what are some of the challenges and some of the obstacles? Actually, you know what? I'll phrase it this way. There's a question that I've been asking everybody in every single podcast. I'm not sure if you've watched any episodes,
yeah.
but it's the magic wand question, right? So I'll ask that question to you right now. Uh, when you're looking at the growth and there are some challenges, some obstacles in the way, if you could wave that magic wand and it can just solve one thing within your company that would allow you to achieve those things, what's the one thing
Yep.
that you would want to solve?
Yeah, the one, here's the funny thing, where we're at, we've had really good growth, so if I had a magic wand, the one thing I would do is wave it and scale. The hardest thing is in our industry vertical in particular, or verticals, where we work, there's so much noise. so
Mm.
much noise.
So trust is of key.
And it's really hard for buyers. So
Mhm.
in this industry, I started as an
Mhm.
agent on the phones. And I grew up running centers before I got into the technology side.
Hmm.
So it is really hard to run your business, being a contact center practice, because you've got tons of humans, you've
Hmm.
got fires you're putting out day to day. It's really hard to do that job, let alone actually go out and look at technology and
Yeah.
stay on the cutting edge, and stay up to date. And, that's the hardest problem is they
Mhm.
hear all this noise and, great suppliers.
Mhm.
We've got 200 suppliers in our portfolio that we work with and hundreds more that we haven't brought into the portfolio, for various reasons. So if I could cut through that noise, and the
Mhm.
only way I could do that is through scale, right?
Mhm.
That's the reality.
And
We do
when you say
really.
cut through the noise, sorry, Fred, do you when you say cut through the noise, do you mean that for possible customers looking towards you guys where they are trying to build some trust and make and find the right person, or do you mean you finding them and the right person for them for
Well, I mean, the best way to generate growth is through inbound, right? I mean,
of
outbound
course.
is necessary, but the what I'm talking about is cutting through the noise. I truly believe most organizations, if they could hear what we do,
Mm.
it's a no brainer.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Most of what we do on our, we've got a model where we bring in contact center consultants, and they actually do the business requirements documentation for free for the client,
Hmm.
because our business model is designed to monetize on the back end.
Hmm.
Now, some of the consulting practices obviously aren't free. You can't bring data scientists in for nothing. Um,
Yeah.
but the majority of our clients utilize our consultants, our gurus is what we call them. Funny enough, um, you know, and they leverage our gurus, and their brains of 20 plus years of contact
Yeah.
center consulting,
Mhm.
to be able to help them identify the right
Awesome.
solutions. Once we talk to a client about this model, it's pretty much a no brainer.
Mhm.
So just getting through the noise of the industry and let more people see,
Hmm.
how the model works, how the back end of all of this operates,
Mhm.
and you have them recognize that they can have, these tremendous access to all these resources,
Mhm.
and not cost them, a fortune, to just get the Gardner Magic Quadrant,
Yeah.
details, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, so, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, man, is,
Awesome.
just scale, and that comes with time. And I've
Yeah.
got plans to solve all that. But if I had the magic wand, that's the thing I'd do.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And then, as you may be aware now, there's a final question here, but it's not a question for me. It's from our last guest to you. And here's what they wanted to ask, and they had no idea who you were. You ready? Here's the question. Things have changed a lot in the last few years. What mistakes have you made, and how would you have done things differently, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, things have changed a lot, and I have made plenty of my own mistakes. I guess I could always cop out and say, I wish I would have bought Bitcoin when it was $5 when I first learned about it, but that was a few more than a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Uh, what I would say is, um, probably the biggest mistake, and this is actually further back, I would have started using EOS earlier, the entrepreneur's
Yep.
operating system.
I actually
And
talked with with their CEO for the white paper that we did, Kelly. She was great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of the, I've been involved in a lot of startups and a handful, let's just say. I think this is sixth.
Hmm.
And most of my failures and in corporate life, most of my departmental or teams that I led, the failures were due to a lack of clear communication,
Hmm.
like clear tool sets that provided transparency, and all the things that EOS brings to an organization. It just gives you that framework. And the beauty of EOS is you don't have to implement it all 100%. Yeah, you can implement pieces and parts, and when it's delivered fully, and you're completely done, or completely through implementation and on
Hmm.
the practice, it's amazing. But just the tool sets alone and learning that, and I would say the mistakes I've made more often than not had to deal with not really making sure, especially in a remote world, that everything's clearly defined,
Mhm.
Everybody has one place where they can go to understand what everybody's working on, where they're at. Are they on
Mm.
track? Are they off track? Where can we jump in and help each other and have one common language across the whole organization? So that when we're talking about goals and targets, everybody fully understands
Mm.
exactly what everybody's rocks are,
Full alignment,
where
yeah.
everybody's working towards, and having that common thread to continue to go back to, and a place to see it, right? Um, you know, so many times just that simple thing that sounds logical,
Mhm.
but most of us don't know how to implement, using those tool sets solve so many problems, man.
Awesome, Fred. Thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible conversation. So much learning on my end. So hopefully everyone listening learned a lot of stuff as well. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, but obviously, of course, a little bit more about cloud tech gurus?
Yeah, of course. Anybody connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm one of those people that, as long as you send you're not trying to sell me something, without actually building a relationship and doing your proper due diligence, I'll connect with almost anybody. So connect with me on LinkedIn. You can search for me by name. And then of course, cloudtechgurus.com. And you can also follow our page on LinkedIn and X and all the other social media places.
Amazing, Fred. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.